All right, I need you to sit down for this one because what I'm about to tell you is so insane, so absolutely mental, that if someone pitches a dystopian fiction script, you'd reject it as unrealistic. Labour MPs just voted to release rapists, paedophiles, stalkers, burglars, and violent offenders from prison after serving as little as a third of their sentences. Not a typo, not exaggeration, 1/3. And they are doing it retrospectively, meaning criminals already locked up, already sentenced, will suddenly get early release because David Lammy and Keir Starmer decided the justice system needed demolishing to save prison space. Britain is absolutely erupting over this. Victims are horrified, police are furious, and Labour's response is essentially, trust us, what could possibly go wrong? Spoiler alert, literally everything. Let me break down this absolute catastrophe of a policy because the details get progressively worse the deeper you dig. The government is pushing through what they're calling a sentencing bill, which is a kind of Orwellian naming that would make George Orwell himself go a bit on the nose, isn't it? This bill allows prisoners on standard determinate sentences to be released after serving just a third of their time, with what they are calling enhanced supervision in the community, followed by a period on license which is unsupervised. So we're talking rapists and paedophiles out after a third, with some supervision initially, then completely free to do whatever they want on license. What could possibly go wrong with that brilliant plan? More serious standard determinate sentences will have a 50% minimum instead of the current 67%, which sounds less bad until you realize we're still talking about reducing prison time for serious criminals during a crime epidemic. And to make everyone feel better about releasing dangerous offenders early, they're expanding tagging to monitor them in the community. Because ankle bracelets have such a stellar track record of preventing reoffending, right? It's like putting a bell on a cat and declaring you've solved the mouse problem. Now here's where this gets properly dystopian. This entire scheme is being applied retrospectively. Let me explain what that means because it's genuinely shocking. Criminals already in prison, already sentenced by judges who carefully consider their crimes and determine appropriate punishment, will suddenly be eligible for early release. They committed their crimes under one set of rules, got sentenced under those rules, and now Labour is changing the rules mid-sentence to let them out early. Thousands of offenders locked up for rape, sexual assault, burglary, stalking, domestic abuse, even death by dangerous driving, will serve less time despite already being sentenced. The justice system is supposed to be about certainty and consistency, and Labour just threw both out the window to solve a prison capacity problem of their own making. The numbers on child sex offenders are absolutely sickening. Analysis by the Daily Express reveals that over 2,000 child sex abusers will be let out early under these reforms. Let me give you the breakdown because each statistic is more horrifying than the last. Last year, 167 people were jailed for raping a female under 16, and they'll serve less time now. 548 pedophiles locked up for making, distributing, or publishing indecent images of children will spend less time behind bars. 229 people convicted of sexual grooming could be allowed home sooner. 200 offenders jailed for sexual activity with a child under 16 will get out earlier. 104 people jailed for sexual activity with a child under 13 could benefit. 248 convicted of sexually assaulting a girl under 13 might be released sooner. And 54 people locked up for raping a child under the age of 13 could be let out earlier. That last one deserves repeating. People who rape children under 13 could serve just a third of their sentences. A staggering 82% of offenders convicted of child sex offenses will receive effectively lighter sentences under this scheme. 82%. That's not a few edge cases slipping through cracks. That's systematic early release of child abusers because the government couldn't be bothered to build more prisons or implement actual criminal justice reform. It's the legislative equivalent of your house being on fire, and instead of putting out the fire or calling firefighters, you just open all the windows and hope the smoke clears before anyone notices the flames. The parliamentary debate on this was absolutely brutal because Conservative MPs could smell the blood in the water, and they went for it. Keir Badenoch came out swinging, saying Labour wants to release rapists and paedophiles earlier because they don't have a backbone to fix Britain's prisons, so they thought they could quietly release them onto our streets. And she's absolutely right. This isn't bold reform. It's cowardly cost-cutting disguised as criminal justice policy. Building more prisons is expensive and politically difficult, so instead Labour is just emptying the ones we have and hoping nobody notices when released offenders inevitably reoffend. Shadow Justice Minister Keir absolutely eviscerated Labour's position, pointing out that their votes made it clear nobody can trust Starmer or Labour MPs on law and order. He said victims of these crimes will rightly be appalled, the wider public will be appalled, and at some point some of those vile criminals will commit further offences when they should have been in prison. And when that happens, Labour will need to justify what they've done to victims and their families. That's not political rhetoric. That's mathematical certainty. You release thousands of violent and sexual offenders early. Statistically, some will reoffend, and those future victims will have Labour's sentencing reforms to thank for their trauma. Former Minister Esther McVey didn't hold back either, saying this bill takes a sledgehammer to the justice system and will dismantle law and order in this country. She called it a mockery to even call it a sentencing bill, suggesting it should be called the Avoid a Sentence Bill because it's a slap in the face to victims and will embolden offenders who will quite literally be laughing all the way to their next crime. That image of criminals laughing as they are released early isn't hyperbole. It's a predictable response when you tell someone their punishment has been cut by a third or more. The Conservatives tabled amendments to limit the damage. One would have ensured early release only applied to prisoners sentenced to less than 12 months. That was defeated 105 to 381, a majority of 276. Labour voted overwhelmingly to reject common sense limitations. Another amendment would have excluded those who commit rape, assault by penetration, grievous bodily harm, stalking and sexual offences against children from early release. That was rejected 182 to 307, majority 125. Labour MPs actively voted to allow rapists and child sex offenders to be released early. Let that sink in. They had a chance to protect the most vulnerable victims, and they chose not to. Thanks for watching UK Secrets. Sometimes the truth about what's happening in Westminster is darker than any of us want to believe.